by the infinite complexity of this vault arching high above. Depending on the culture of their birth and their professed religion, humans have imagined the heavens as the residence of divinities or of a single god, and on occasion have even built their temples on the model of the celestial vault. Such is the case of the Roman Pantheon, whose dome features a central open oculus through which the constellations can be seen at night. During the first half of the 12th century, a different kind of dome was realized for the baptistry of San Giovanni. Not hemispherical, but built in sections on an octagonal base, supported by hidden ribs forming 12 colossal Gothic arches with a diameter of 26 meters. It was this type of structure that the Florentines had in mind for the dome, or cupola, of their new cathedral. They undoubtedly wished to replicate, on a massive scale, the octagon of the baptistry adjacent to the cathedral, reiterating its evocation of the Octavia Dies, the 8th day of eternity. As construction works on the cathedral progressed eastwards during the last decades of the 14th century, the builders greatly strengthened the vital pilasters of the nave, and between the radial chapels of the transepts and the apse, they wedged in massive buttresses to sustain the weight and lateral thrust of the cupola. The final phase of this preparatory process was the construction of the high drum, whose function was, and still is, to raise the cupola high above the level of the city's roofs. Simultaneously, the drum channels the dome's weight and the dynamic thrust downward through the structural framework. Given the knowledge available to architects at that time, the only way to proceed with the construction of the vaults and cupola was through the preventive designing of a supporting framework. But the dimensions of the planned structures did not make this solution possible. In 1418, Filippo Brunelleschi, who had gone to Rome to study the engineering logic of ancient buildings like the Pantheon, declared that he could construct the enormous dome without a supporting framework. Brunelleschi asked his skeptical adversaries and rival competitors if they were able to make an egg stand upright on a marble tabletop. When his illustrious colleagues failed to accomplish this task, Brunelleschi took the egg and deftly broke its bottom on the marble, as Vasari recounts, thus obtaining the small flat surface capable of supporting it. "We can do the same thing too," said the other architects, to whom Filippo replied, "You would know how to build a cupola as well, if I showed you the way to do it." Now we know that his engineering plans arranged for the construction of two domes, one internal, the other external, bound together and supported by a system of hidden ribs, analogous to that used 300 years earlier in the baptistry. To achieve the building of this structure, Brunelleschi designed a suspended scaffold made of enormous tree trunks felled high in the Casentino forest and floated downstream on the island of Florence. Once they were shaped into beams, they were anchored into the masonry of the drum, forming a huge octagonal wheel. On top of these beams were placed vertical planks in order to create an overhanging platform with a wide aperture at its center that allowed for a crane powered by oxen to lift the building materials to the work site at a height of 60 meters above ground level. Despite ferocious criticism of his innovative methods and letters that were sent to the Opera del Duomo with dire warnings of the inevitable failure of his project, by the year 1430 it was clear that Filippo was succeeding with his plans and that soon the cupola would be finished. Looking ahead to the fast approaching readiness of the underlying area, Luca della Robbia and Donatello were commissioned to carve two marble cantorie, or singing galleries, now on display in the museum. On the 25th of March, 1436, the religious feast of the Annunciation, which in the Florentine calendar was New Year's Day, Pope Eugene IV consecrated the entire church, for the first time leading both the clergy and the people into the transcendent space created around the high altar of the cathedral, begun 140 years earlier. Still, Brunelleschi's work was not yet finished. In 1436, the architect brought to completion the octagonal wooden choir below his cupola, and in the following years he finished the classicizing tabernacles at the base of the drum. In addition, he perfected the project of a lantern crowning the cupola. This is a completely marble structure 6 stories high, whose weight serves as a keystone sealing the dynamic system of the cupola's thrusts. Brunelleschi, who died in 1446, did not witness the completion of the lantern, which, however, is faithful to his model, conserved at the museum. With the cupola finally in place, a program of artworks was carried out inside the cathedral, proportionate to the colossal space of this church. The immense frescoes of condottieri, or captains of war, the monumental clock on the interior of the facade, and the bronze doors of the northern sacristy. Functioning in direct relation with the cupola are the stained glass windows of the 8 eyes of the drum, depicting the stories of Christ and of Mary. Brunelleschi himself did not see the completion of the marble facing of the drum, which 20 years after his death still showed its underlying structure of contraforte, or rough, unfinished stone. This fact can be seen in the cathedral's painting in honor of Dante, signed by Domenico di Michelino and dated 1465. In the final decades of the 15th century, several artists proposed solutions for this highly visible area of the supporting structure of the cupola, and the museum conserves the relevant wooden models. In Domenico di Michelino's painting, one can also see, already in place, the great gilt ball surmounted by a cross, which in reality Andrea del Verrocchio was then only beginning to craft. With the construction of the cupola, Florence became the first European city that could boast an absolute monument, which, like certain ancient buildings, gave a new sense to the very idea of collective urban life. During the mid-15th century, Leon Battista Alberti, a fervent admirer of Brunelleschi, would design another Florentine cupola for the Marian sanctuary of the Santissima Annunziata. Around the year 1480, in a fresco in the Sistine Chapel, Pietro Perugino included the image of a temple with a cupola similar to that of Santa Maria del Fiore. Halfway through the following century, Michelangelo would go to Rome to make the dome of St. Peter's resemble that of Florence's Duomo, but with a circular shape and a narrower diameter. Paradoxically, the image that best sums up the sense of Brunelleschi's cupola does not follow, but precedes its construction. In the Annunciation, depicted in a relief sculpture of the early 14th century, there appears, in between the Archangel Gabriel and Mary, a small domed temple, a visual metaphor of the event which, in that very moment, occurred in the Virgin's womb, the conception of the Savior. In the same way, Filippo Brunelleschi created a space in which human beings can feel themselves, like Maria, capable of receiving God.